Every product gets better over time. That is what progress means. But what if the opposite were true? What if the people selling you things figured out a long time ago that a perfect product is the worst thing that can happen to their business? There is a light bulb in a California fire station that has been burning since 1901. It has never been replaced. And the companies that sell you light bulbs today would very much prefer you never heard of it. Livermore, California. Fire station number 6. A small glass bulb, still on, over 1 million hours. It was made by hand. It has outlasted every light bulb manufactured since. What it proves, and why that proof was buried, is one of the most documented corporate conspiracies in history. This is money memory. The past is still running. Corporations do not always compete to make better products. Sometimes they compete to make worse ones. When they can, they coordinate. The Phoebus Cartel is not a theory. It is a documented fact. And the mechanism it established is still operating today, just under different names. And if this sounds distant, it is not. In 2017, Apple slowed down older iPhones through a software update. In 2020, they paid hundreds of millions in settlements. The mechanism is identical to what 6 corporations agreed to in a Swiss hotel room in 1924. Here's where it started. By the early 1920s, the light bulb was becoming a problem. Not for consumers, for manufacturers. Engineers had moved from carbon filaments to tungsten. Bulbs were lasting 2,000 hours. Some reached 2,500. In 1923, Osram sold 63 million bulbs. The following year, 28 million. Not because demand collapsed, because the bulbs were lasting too long. The product was working too well. And that was the crisis. In December 1924, the top executives of the world's largest light bulb companies gathered in Geneva. Philips, General Electric, Osram, Tokyo Electric, Associated Electric. They called themselves the Phoebus Cartel, after Phoebus, the Greek god of light. And what started as a meeting would become a machine. This is the first mechanism, coordinated degradation. The cartel agreed to set a maximum lifespan for all light bulbs sold by its members, 1,000 hours, not as a floor, as a ceiling. Bulbs that lasted significantly longer were a violation. The cartel established testing stations. If a bulb lasted too long, it was fined. More than 3,000 hours, 200 Swiss francs per 1,000 bulbs sold. There are records of those fines being issued and paid. Engineers who had spent years figuring out how to make bulbs last longer were now ordered to make them fail faster. They tried thinner filaments, different materials, weaker connection points. They were not incompetent. They were precise. By 1934, the average bulb lifespan had dropped to 1,205 hours, exactly where the cartel wanted it. In the 4 years after the limit was enforced, cartel member sales increased by 25%. Margins expanded. The system rewards selling more units. It punishes durability. Once that structure exists, making a better product becomes irrational. But that was only the first layer. This is the second mechanism. Planned obsolescence. Nylon stockings were introduced in the 1940s. Extraordinarily durable. Women lined up. There were riots. And then the manufacturers realized what the light bulb companies had realized. A product that never wears out eventually stops generating revenue. The engineers who had built a nearly indestructible fiber were told to weaken it, to find the precise point of fragility that would keep customers coming back. They found it. By the mid-20th century, planned obsolescence had moved from conspiracy to philosophy. The logic that a product dying on schedule sustains demand became standard business practice. The system no longer required a secret meeting in Geneva. It ran on its own logic. Every company that makes a durable product faces the same incentive structure. Make it too good, and customers stop returning. Make it fragile enough, and demand is permanent. But here's the part that tends to get skipped. The cartel did not just limit lifespan, it obscured the trade-off. There is a real physical relationship between how bright a tungsten bulb is and how long it lasts. Run the filament hotter, brighter, more efficient light. Run it cooler, dimmer, but it lasts longer. This trade-off is real. It is physics. The cartel set the limit at 1,000 hours, not because that was the optimal balance, but because it maximized repurchase cycles. A brighter bulb. A customer who came back every year instead of every 3. That is coordinated degradation. And if this sounds familiar, it should. In 2003, filmmaker Casey Neistat called Apple support because his iPod battery had died after 18 months. A replacement. $255, nearly the price of a new device. He filmed the call. It went viral. Apple settled. Then, 14 years later, Apple slowed down older iPhones through a software update. In 2020, they paid hundreds of millions in settlements across multiple countries. The car industry uses software locks to block repair data. Printer cartridges report empty before they are. Appliance companies design products where one failed component means replacing the entire unit. Every company. Every sector. The same logic. The mechanism is identical. Only the names change. But what happens when this stops being about inconvenience? When the product is not a light bulb, but a battery in a car, a chip in a medical device, a software lock on equipment a farmer needs to harvest? The right to repair movement is now proposed legislation in over 25 U.S. states and the European Union. That fight is happening now because the mechanism the Phoebus Cartel designed is still running. Collapse is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is incremental. One failed component, one locked file, one deliberate weakness, your device, your repair bill, your data. Not abstract anymore. So what should you take away from this? First, the incentive structure matters more than the intention. The engineers who weakened those filaments were not villains. They were employees inside a system that rewarded the outcome. Second, durability is political. The right to own what was bought and repair it is not guaranteed. It is contested. Third, the gap between what is possible and what is sold is the cost the system extracts, invisibly, every time. 120 years. One light bulb, still on, built before the meeting in Geneva, before the fines, before the filaments were deliberately thinned. That bulb is not a miracle. It is a baseline. Subscribe to money memory. Because the patterns don't change, only the names do.